Hey guys, my name's Mannequin and welcome back to EDM Pro Tips. Today's topic is break a rule, and that basically means go into your next track and try this if you need inspiration. Get something that you've done in like every single track and then just switch it up. For instance, okay, so let's say you always make a piano so it's nice and punchy and it's got some sustain and it's really, it's just compressed really well. Then instead, next time you add a piano to a track, for example, take the piano and get the compression so it just squashes the whole thing down so it sounds flat as a pancake. Don't let it be punchy and have a lot of sustain. Just squash it down all the way. Try something like that. Or maybe let's say you always do a snare on every other kick. So every other beat you have a snare that hits, and instead you could do something like taking that snare and kind of make it go on the offbeat or slightly one over to the right or something like that. Just try something new. It's basically like I talked about. I think in almost like my first or second video I talked about you get into these mindsets of how you should be doing some things, and sometimes you just do it in every single. Sometimes you just do it in every single track, and you're not even thinking about whether or not it's creative. So this is basically just a way to deliberately look for something that you usually do or something that you think is the right way to do, and then just swap it up to get something creative. So, there's a lot of different things you could do this on. You could do this for like EQ, you could do it for compression, you could do it for reverb, you could do it for anything that basically has a way that you typically do it or has a way that people say that you should do it a certain way. Like, sometimes you want a drum to be you usually want drums to be punchy, right? Well, then maybe try to make a background sort of effect drum that's got like some sort of modulation on it and it's not compressed very well. Or not that it's not compressed very well, but it's just compressed to be kind of flat instead of punchy. Maybe try that out. That's an interesting thing to experiment with because not a lot of people put modulation on their drums very often because it's something that's kind of seen as you almost always want the drums to be crisp, clear, punchy, and everything like that, and modulation just kills that. So you might want to try something like that, just where you kind of buck the norm. You could do this musically also. I imagine you've seen it in one of my videos. I think I was talking about one of my tracks where I did a chromatic note progression, basically, where I just went, I just kept on going down a half step, and it wasn't in key, but it sounded really cool. So it wasn't in key. It should have sounded bad, per se, but even though it wasn't in key, I was actually able to get it to sound nice. So that's another way that you could like try to do something different and break a rule per se. Get out of the key and try to do something that's out of key but sounds great anyway. So there's, like I said, there's a whole bunch of different things you could try this on. But suffice it to say that if you haven't like actually looked in your tracks to try to do this, and you've just been working in your tracks trying to do everything right. Try to deliberately do something wrong and have something in mind as to what you're going to be doing, so you're not just like, let's try this and this and this, and it just kind of sounds like a mess in the end. But actually, like, try to make it so you're like, okay, I'm going to deliberately squish this piano and just like make it so it has no dynamics whatsoever. I'm going to try to like make it sound like really full and heavy and kind of, so it's taking up a lot of space. You could try that with the piano instead of just the normal, like, nice piano sound where it's kind of, it's got enough punch and it's drifting and everything like that. So it's essentially a way to deliberately look for ways to be unique and have your track so it stands out, and also to it increases your repertoire of things that you know how to do when you're producing also, because there will be some things that I'm never going to cover just because I won't think about it. Like, for instance, like I've been talking about with the piano, there's two types of pianos, the punchy one and the really squashed, compressed one. I might never cover how to do that in a video, but if you just experiment around and try to do things wrong, then chances are you'll run into something that actually sounds really cool, and you might have heard it before and you were wondering how to do it, and now suddenly you know how to do it. So it's really deliberately looking for things that you could do wrong, per se, is a great way to experiment and learn new things, just because that's what a lot of producers do in their tracks to get them to sound unique in the professional industry. Which is why you hear things that like you hear a drum with tons of reverb on it, and normally you don't have like a kick drum with tons of reverb on it. Normally you have like snares and hats have a lot of reverb or something. So so that's where that uniqueness comes from. It's them searching what rule can I break to get this track to stand out and to be different from my last track or the track before that. So it's a cool thing to try, and I really suggest you do it. You don't have to do it in all your projects. Just like if you haven't tried it before, try it in your next project and see if you can get something, at least like one thing, that that usually you wouldn't ever do because it's like you're breaking a rule, and actually do it to be creative and be stylistic. So that's my suggestion. Although, keep in mind that if you break a typical rule in a genre, you may it may not be the best thing to choose, just because, like, I don't know. For example, if you choose to, swap out your song structure and kind of like make it weird, that might not be the best idea. But it can be done. It can be done really well. But you just have to be very careful about how you choose to implement something, and basing off what you're choosing. So, like, you might want to, for drums, there might be something that you would do for a drum, but you wouldn't do for a synthesizer when you're trying to break a rule or something like that. So, experiment around, see if you can find something. But remember, when in doubt, leave it out. That's I think I remember Joe Gilder. He's someone at Home Studio Corner. I think that's one of the things he says quite often. But that's use your ears and trust your ears. If it sounds good and you're technically breaking a rule, it doesn't matter. It sounds good. But if you're breaking a rule, or even if you're staying within the rules and it doesn't sound good, just take it out. Don't ever try to make something that doesn't work, because it's like, it doesn't work. Just take it out already. So, trust your ears, and if you try to break a rule and it sounds good, keep it. And if it doesn't sound good, obviously pull it out. Sometimes you might want to just like keep it because like it's unique. It took me forever to do, and it's unique, and it kind of stands out in the track, but it doesn't really fit. Well, then just take it out. I mean, you could always like save that project, like save a second version of that project, and then just go in, rip everything else out, and use that one unique thing to build an entirely new project off of. You can use that as inspiration for a whole nother track instead of trying to make it fit in a track it won't fit in. So that's just my suggestion for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.